What's up, you wild ghouls? It's your favorite R.L. Stine impersonators back here. It's been a while, but your two best mates here, Logan Myerz, my good friend over there.
I'm Henry Hill, and we are back today to review the brand new Netflix original, the first part of a trilogy, actually, from our good mate R.L. Stine, the author R.L. Stine, and I'm talking about Fear Street. And the first movie is what part is it, Uncle Logan?
It's 1994, and that was a damn good year. We had VHS stores, we had the big cinema, big blockbusters coming out, and we had really good novels back when you could enjoy reading books. And R.L. Stine was killing it back in the day for kids and books aimed at teenagers, and that being Fear Street. Huge fan of the books. I remember reading those, getting super scared of the horror and the macabre that took place in the book series. And this time they're bringing it into three films, a trilogy, and the first one debuting this past week. And we're talking about 1994, and it is spooky to say the least.
Yeah, very interesting concept. We're having a teenage film here about obviously the book series from R.L. Stine. R.L. Stine's probably most known, obviously, for the Goosebumps series,
Yep.
which was more tailored to a little bit younger audience, I'd say. I remember I started reading it when I was probably I don't think I was even 10 yet, probably maybe even 7, 8, 9. Well, the Fear Street series is tailored more towards the teenage crowd, and this film, this first film anyway, is going towards the teenage audience, and it's going to try to bring horror to the teenage audience. So going into this film, we didn't really know what to expect. How much horror were they going to be able to do? Is this going to be like R-rated? Were they going to be able to, have some good kills in it? Were they going to be able to cuss? What did we expect? We saw some stuff in the trailer, but yeah, thankfully in the film it was pretty R-rated. There were some good kills in it. And right away, the tone is set in the beginning where we see old Maya Hawke, Uma Thurman, and Ethan's daughter. Obviously, we've seen her in Stranger Things to begin with, and we see her here right away. So it shows promise right away. And we're in a mall, and it feels very 90s. There's a lot of neon lights. It feels like you're walking into a Spencer's gift store
Yep.
with all the black lights and stuff. And basically, she's working at a kiosk, and she's closing up for the night, and there's somebody in a skeleton mask haunting the mall.
Yep. And this is such a total nod and nod, I should say, to the Scream movies, Wes Craven movies, took place in the 90s. Definitely has that same atmosphere, and also incorporating the neon lights. It has that feel going back to the shopping mall in the 90s back, when you can go and blow a bunch of money and, have fun being young. And they really capture that early on. And we're introduced to a masked assailant, much like other slasher flicks, and setting up the scene with Maya Hawke's character, and doesn't really end too well, which is quite surprising. I thought she was going to be a bigger actress in this movie, but I guess not. But they set that up really nicely. It reminded me much of the original Scream movie, Drew Barrymore, the phone call and her and ending up getting sliced and diced. So they're definitely paying heavy homage to the Scream movies with this. And that's the introduction of this. This movie takes place in Shadyside. It's had a long streak of murders that have been taking place in this town. They think it has to do with this witch's curse for like 300 years. And her name was Sarah Fear. And it really sets up the supernatural element of the film, not just being a slasher, but also supernatural, having to do with this curse and this witch, and bringing back all these serial killers from past killings. A lot of them, reminded me of like Jason Voorhees and, the Ghostface from Scream and things like that. But we're introduced to the cast, a bunch of teenagers in this movie, even though they didn't really look like it. But most of them are pretty forgettable in this. The only character I really enjoyed was Josh. He's played by Benjamin Flores Jr. He was hilarious. He was like the cliche geek you would see in a John Hughes movie, Weird Science, The Breakfast Club, any of those movies. He just was really funny and standout performance. The main characters, you had the gay couple, and the cliche characters, the snobby girl, just all the characters, but they're all pretty forgettable.
Nobody really stood out to me. None of the characters. Josh, like you mentioned, was my favorite too. He's funny. But that's one of the big problems with the film for me. If you're going to have a film like this, I know it's a horror film, but you have to have an interesting lead that you can follow throughout the film and really cheer for. And this one just was kind of lacking that. I wasn't really attached to anybody specifically. I did enjoy the aspect of this film where they played a lot of 90s music. They made it
Yes.
feel very 90s. So that was one thing that they really did well. It was filmed very nicely too. Everything looked cool. I like how they incorporated a lot of the neon colors for this throughout the film. It looked very good. It was filmed very well. And for being a kids movie, it wasn't all that bad. It just wasn't as good as I was hoping for. Seeing all the advanced praise for it and everything, I was expecting a little more.
Yeah.
So that this is one of those cases where the hype kind of outgrew the movie for me, and when I watched it, I wasn't 100% satisfied with it.
Yeah, same here. I've been seeing all the critics' reviews, all our friends and Cinephellas boys have been talking about Fear Street, how much they loved it. I don't know what I was missing, but I didn't love it. I thought it was okay. Had a lot of problems with it, mostly just being the characters and not being attached to any of them, really kind of bland and generic. And I was expecting more. You don't have like the cliche final girl. Most horror flicks, they have the final girl, Laurie Strode, Nancy from Nightmare on Elm Street, Sidney Prescott from Scream. You didn't have that with any characters. They're just all kind of forgettable, making stupid mistakes. Um, and that just kind of took me out of the movie. I wanted a little more. You're thinking it's a horror flick. You don't need really great character development, but I just didn't really feel attached to anybody. So I didn't really care if they died or lived. But yeah, there was great aspects of this film. Like you were saying, the cinematography was filmed beautifully. The colors, the color palettes, all of the neon lights had that very 90s nostalgic feel to it. The music was really, really great. A lot of songs, back in the 90s, growing up in that time and just remembering that, it really elevated, that particular scene. And yeah, really brutal, great, gory kill scenes as well. A few towards the end were really surprising. With that being said, all those are really great parts, really great aspects of Fear Street. Hopefully in the second film, which they go back to the 70s, they'll fix the character development. Maybe we have some characters we could be more attached to instead of being so generic and kind of bland. With that being said, I had a pretty decent time with Fear Street 1994, part one. Had some problems with it. Mostly the characters just didn't work for me. Josh was really great, and that's about it. Everything else was really fantastic, really had a great atmosphere to it. And I wish Maya Hawke would have been in the film longer because I think she really would have carried this movie. It would have been a way better film for me because she's just a really great actress. But didn't like what they did with that. Maybe they're just trying to do the Scream thing with Drew Barrymore, but whatever. But I think she would have carried this movie better. So that being said, I will give Fear Street 1994 a 3 out of 5 Maya Hawke hair pieces.
This was a real big nostalgia-filled film. It took you back to the 90s with the music and all the nods to the 90s horror films. The 90s were a big time in horror. We saw some really legendary things, obviously from Wes Craven with Scream. We hadn't seen that kind of movie before. The way he played with all the aspects of horror movies of the past and brought it to this new generation of fans. And back then we were, both pretty young. And our minds were still being formed. So seeing all this horror happen in the 90s and the way that this film brought that back and made you feel was one of the really good aspects of this film. So they did a really great job with that. I loved the look of it. It looked like they spent some good money on it without, having to have a huge budget. I do like how they're tying all three films in the trilogy together with this, the aspect of the witches here in Shadyside. And just the problems in the movie are the characters. There just wasn't anybody that really stood out. Like you mentioned, if Maya Hawke would have been the lead, it probably would have been a lot better. But for whatever reason, she wasn't in the whole film. But there were things to love in this film. The kills, like you mentioned, there's a really awesome one. Somebody gets kind of shredded up there. We'll say that. There were some good graphic kills. So I was impressed with that. So overall, I felt a lot, I felt pretty much the same as you did on it. It's a 3 out of 5 Fear Street hair pieces. Woo!
We're going to be back here talking more Loki on Disney Plus. We were kind of behind because I moved, but we're back in business now. So getting more reviews right up here on our YouTube channel. Make sure to check us out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and our website, Cinephellas.com, for all the sexiest and greatest in the entertainment business.
Yeah, real sexy. We bring the sexy back, just like old Uncle JT. Yeah. Back to review Fear Street Part 2, 1978, real soon for you. It's coming out on Friday. I like how they're releasing these films back to back to back. We're going to get 3 weeks of these films. I'm really looking forward to 1978. Just looking at the trailer, it looks like it's got a big, obviously, homage to Friday the 13th, the slasher movies of the 70s. So I'm hoping that this one will be a little stronger. Hopefully, Sadie Sink will be a good character to follow in this, and hopefully they'll, obviously, fix some of the mistakes that they made in the first one. So yeah, with that being said, we'll be back for part 2 and part 3. Part 3 is going to go back to 1666. So we're going to see the origin of the witch. So yeah, stay tuned for the next 2 films in this trilogy, which we will be reviewing. And we hope you guys check them out as well. Let us know what you guys thought of Fear Street Part 1, 1994. Did you like all the 90s goodness in it like we did? Did you think the characters were pretty bland and forgettable and very cliche? Yeah. So yeah, stay tuned for more great stuff here with the Cinephellas. With that being said, I think Uncle Logan and I are going to go get some Metamucil and call it a night.
This is your 2 favorite ghouls signing out from Shadyside until the next Fear Street review. Cheers!
Cheers!